Good evening. I'm Ed Gallagher, President of the American Scandinavian Foundation. It's a great pleasure to welcome you this evening to our headquarters of American Scandinavian Foundation, Scandinavia House, the Nordic Center in America, for this rather special discussion of the new book, Reykjavik, A Crime Story, by its two authors, Katrín Jakobsdóttir and Ragnar Jónasson. It's a particular pleasure to have Katrín Jakobsdóttir with us, since she is the Prime Minister of Iceland. And we'll hear perhaps a little more of that. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Scandinavia House, welcome. And I would like to remind you that we offer a wide variety of programs, literary talks such as this, lectures, symposia, seminars, concerts, film screenings, children's events, and language classes. So if you've not been here before, do come back and you can check out our website, scandinaviahouse.org, for more information. As I said, it's a real pleasure to welcome our two authors this evening. Katrín Jakobsdóttir, Prime Minister of Iceland since 2017. She has been in Parliament since 2007 and Prime Minister since 2017. And she has experienced great popularity through a variety of great challenges. And she's currently in New York for the meeting of the United Nations General Assembly. Prior to her undertaking her political career, she taught Icelandic literature. She did receive a master's degree in Icelandic literature, and she taught it, and also worked for media and publishing houses, and has also, I think, done a number of broadcasting assignments over the years, right? She has served as Minister for Education, Research, and Culture from 2009 to 2013, and she became the chair of her political party, the Left Green Movement, in 2013. Her co-author, Ragnar Jónasson, is an internationally acclaimed best-selling author who has sold over 3 million books in 36 countries worldwide. A native of Reykjavik, he also works as an investment banker and teacher in copyright law at Reykjavik University. He has previously worked on radio and television, including as a TV news reporter, and since the age of 17, he has translated 14 of Agatha Christie's books into Icelandic. That's very impressive. So he knows where the bodies are. He is the co-founder of the Reykjavik International Crime Writing Festival, Iceland Noir, and has his critically acclaimed international bestseller, The Darkness, is soon to be a major TV series, and Outside, another bestseller, is soon to be a feature film. The moderator this evening is a man of great distinction himself as the founder of the much beloved Mysterious Bookshop here in New York City, as well as the founder of the Mysterious Press, which publishes literary crime fiction. He has received many awards, including 2 Edgar Awards, MWA's Ellery Queen Award, and the Raven. And he also is a author, I guess, for the Strand magazine, and has edited more than 70 anthologies of crime. So Otto Penzler, I turn it all over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ed. It's a joy to be here. All the things that Ed said was exactly what I was going to say, and so I have absolutely nothing to say at the moment. Give me a second, I will pull myself together and think of something. The first, I really have a question that I wanted to know, and I bet everybody does. What spurred the two of you to collaborate on a book? This is an unusual thing to do, probably because James Patterson did a book with Hillary Clinton, and so you thought this is what you should be doing also. Am I right? Do I have that right? So, if not, maybe there's another reason, so maybe you should tell it.
Well, we have known each other for quite a long time because we move in the same circles in Iceland, which are the crime fiction circles. Ragnar having written so many books, organized the festival Iceland Noir. I had been criticizing crime fiction before I became a politician, and I was actually in we were actually in a committee that decided the best translated crime novel in Iceland every year for several years during my time as a parliamentarian. But the reason that we decided to write this book is that Ragnar has been pressing me to write a book with him for several years. And I always said, yeah, that's a good idea. And when he came up with the idea of a missing girl in Videy, I said, this is a good idea. We will do this. And I did not plan to keep that promise. But then a pandemic hit us. And actually I thought, okay, all of a sudden, everybody's life was turned upside down. And we had some, and time became different during the pandemic. And I found time to write in the evenings because there were no meetings. It was a very different way of life.
I mean, she actually forgets one thing, that we were by chance together on the national television 2 years ago on a Friday night sort of talk show, and I used that opportunity to announce to the Icelandic nation that we were doing the book, and I think that was the point of no return for her.
But Ragnar is, this describes him very well because he's a very passive-aggressive character. So you kind of are stuck with that.
Ragnar is a very good friend of the bookshop. He's been there many, many times, and earlier told me the story about when he came to America, to New York for the first time. He had one place that was on his list of things that he wanted to do, and it was quite a few years ago. But it was the Mysterious Bookshop. So I and the other people there are always very happy to see him. And when I had this chance to be here tonight, I was very nervous because I've never interviewed a prime minister before. I was even more nervous about pronouncing Katrín Jakobsdóttir, which
Excellent.
and she put me at ease later, so I'm so grateful for that. I brought a book for Ragnar early because he wrote to me and said, "Would you please bring a book with you?" And it was a book by an author that he likes very much, and I bet you do, and I do, Ellery Queen. And so, inevitably, for those of you who don't know, the mystery fans all know this, but if you're not a diehard mystery fan, you may not know that Ellery Queen is the name of the author and the character. And the books were written by two cousins who grew up together in Brooklyn, and they wrote these books together for many years. So here's my question. You've collaborated on a book, and I used to write a column, and I asked Frederick Dane, who is one of the Ellery Queen duo, said, who does what? How did you work together? And the answer that I got was typically evasive of what writers do. He said, well, we've tried everything. But it turns out I did learn how most of those books went. How did it work with you? Did one of you do more plotting? Did one of you do more writing? How did it work? Katrín, why don't you start, and then Ragnar can correct you.
It started with an idea. Because we were having lunch, and Ragnar says, I have an idea that we could write a book about a girl gone missing in Videy, in 1956, but the main plot would be in 1986. And this was when I said, yeah, let's do that. But did not really plan to keep that promise. But then when we decided to do, really go into it, we actually made a synopsis, what would happen in the book. First the broad lines, and then for each chapter. And then we simply wrote it separately. So we wrote different chapters. Sometimes we wrote part of a chapter, and then we sent the chapters between us, and we read them and made our, remarks about them. And actually, we really tried to polish it so people couldn't actually see, because we were thinking about our Icelandic audience, where everybody would be, oh, he wrote that, and she wrote that, and oh, nobody would say that except Ragnar or something. So we really tried to polish it so it wouldn't be quite obvious.
Were there arguments? Did you have fights?
Not really, not during the process of writing. That was.
It has become worse after publishing.
Yes. Yeah, we hardly speak anymore. No, the first time, the first argument was when I hate doing editing because I like writing, and then the editing part is sort of a nuisance. And there was a summer before the publication, and the book had been with me for quite a few weeks, and then I got a call from an angry prime minister, and that was quite an experience. And so I hurried up and finished. But it was friendly, and even when I was reading, of course we read the book again and again, and there were even parts of the books that I couldn't even remember who wrote because it had gone so many times back and forth. And I think that was, pretty much the intention. But as Katrín says, we wrote different chapters, and it wasn't like I would do number 1, 3, and 5, but it was much more like. She liked the particular character, and she did maybe 2 or 3 chapters about him or her, and so it was a friendly. It was never any real argument about who would write what. It came pretty naturally, and it ended up being, I think, close to 50-50.
But what I read, I could not. There was no way to not see that it was a smoothly, wonderfully written book. I don't know how much credit goes to the translator. Both of you speak impeccable English, but you wrote this book in Icelandic and then had it translated. What do you think about the translation? Are you happy with the translation? Do you think the book could have been better with a better translator or a different translator? What do you think?
I think it's an extremely good I'm a great admirer of translators because it's a tough job, to take a text from another person and somehow translate it to a different language, but I think she did an amazing job.
Yeah, I mean, Victoria Cribb is the translator, and she's done my books for many years now, and she is absolutely wonderful. I mean, I don't think we could have a better translator. So it was always in very good hands, and then of course we do some editing with her and reviews, and so again that was another collaboration that went well. But I think we're very happy with her.
Maybe the interesting thing I thought following that process was some of the things, because this is a book written for Icelandic readers. So there are a lot of references because it's set in 1986. So the interesting thing was that some of them had to be explained for a new English-speaking audience because probably all the references would have been lost without explanations.
I could see that. One of the things that I was interested in was, and I don't know if it's just me being the reader or the way you were able to write this book, it seems to me, and you correct me, it seems to me that you based this on a true story. Is that true?
No, it's not based on a true story.
No, all made up.
No, but yes, it's made up, all the characters and the case, but there is... let's say a reference to the fact that we have had many cases in Iceland of missing persons, and this is a case of missing person. Right. So it would actually be more common to think about missing persons than actual murders in Iceland. Yeah. And Iceland is, the most peaceful country in the world, so luckily we don't have many murders, but missing persons is another thing. And often, and it's very difficult because you don't know what happens to people. You're surrounded by the ocean where people disappear. We have bad weathers where people can disappear. So let's say that it was a little bit like a historical reference to all the people who have gone missing.
I thought it was I think it's a tribute to your writing for me to believe absolutely that you had taken a case, perhaps a famous case in Iceland, or just a favorite, something that bothered you, having read it, that you wanted to immortalize it by putting in a book. But it was so realistic that I believed it was nonfiction, or that you had taken nonfiction and novelized it. So I applaud you for that. Let me think what else I wanted to say. Can I talk about something other than the book for just a moment? I want to talk about your politics. As you know, Katrín is here because of the UN Assembly being in New York, and has been talking to heads of state all over the place and so on. So the last thing you probably want to talk about is politics. But I just have one question. You are in the left-green party. And what I read was it's neither left nor green. So is this Icelandic usage that you fool people by saying, I'm left-green, but I'm not really? Or does everybody know what that means?
Well, I would consider myself both the left and the green.
Oh. Then,
But probably sometimes being criticized for not being enough to the left and green enough. But left-green, it's not like in Danish where we have a left party which is, where we have a right-wing party which is actually called left. So that is a, because we're in Scandinavia House, it's an interesting fact. But no, I would consider myself as a left-green politician, definitely.
okay. Okay.
But me and Ragnar, we do not talk about politics because we absolutely do not share political views.
The only people I like talking politics with are the people who don't agree with me.
Yeah, well, he is absolutely impossible, so.
There are no politics in the book. It is a real mystery. I don't want to say old-fashioned because that carries some baggage with it because it's I don't want to read old-fashioned, but it does have it's structured the way a good classic traditional detective mystery story would be structured, and perhaps it's not surprising that the book is dedicated to Agatha Christie, obviously a favorite of both of yours.
Yeah, I mean, turned out she was the only thing we had in common when we when we needed to do a dedication. But we both love Agatha Christie, and I mean, we both grew up reading her, and we still do, and still talk about her books and really enjoy them. And I mean, she was of course one of the greatest crime writers out there, and some people say she did all the best plots. So there's nothing left for the rest of us, but we try.
You did indeed. Are you thinking of another book together?
No.
I think we are, yeah. But
They agree about nothing. How did this book get written?
Well, the good thing was that it was during a pandemic, so it was in separate places. Isn't that just the perfect recipe?
Did you enjoy the process of writing more than you enjoy politics?
Not maybe more, but I really enjoyed the process of writing because I haven't written fiction before, so it was interesting because Ragnar has done this many times before, so it was interesting to really watch the process of writing a synopsis and then kind of writing the story after you had decided on the plot line. And then what I really enjoyed was also to create characters which somehow, and I never thought that this would happen, but I actually, I formed a strong relationship with the characters in the book. So all of a sudden I had a very strong opinion on where they should live or that this was their name and they couldn't have any other name. So it was a really enjoyable process. And I would definitely recommend for anybody who has not done anything creative to try to really open for their creative side. It is a good thing, it really improves your life, I think, and improves you as a human being.
I imagine you're right for people who have a creative urge, and most people, it seems to me, do in one way or another. As a publisher who looks at manuscripts being submitted, I think half of America has taken your advice and written a mystery novel. Ragnar, did you find it more constraining? Because you've written a lot of books on your own. You never had help other than the kind of help that every writer gets from editors and so on. Did you find it more difficult to live with another person telling you what her character should be?
No, I mean, I enjoyed it. I mean, I wouldn't have approached her with the idea if I hadn't been open to a proper collaboration. And when you go into a project like this, you have to be open-minded, and you have to be ready to make concessions in the writing. So that was the plan all along. This would be our book, not my book. And I mean, as you say, I've done more than 10 books before this one, and it's a lonely profession being a writer, and also in promoting books, you're always doing the same thing pretty much. You're up there alone on stage reading from the book or whatever it is. And I thought this would make for a nice change, if nothing else, just to have someone with me, on this journey. And so here we are now, and it's great, and we're very good friends. So we have a lot of fun with all of this.
That's great, and the fact that you're talking about the book and your life and the process and all is so much more interesting than reading from a book. We do events in my store. We do about 100 events a year in my bookshop, and I always discourage the writer from reading from the book because, if you're in a bookshop and you're buying a book, chances are you can read your own damn book, because it's so much more interesting to hear about this process and about your thoughts and the way it came to fruition, rather than just reading pages from a book. So I'm glad you didn't bring a book on stage and think, well, I'll only read for 20 minutes, which when you're sitting listening to somebody drone on about their book, no matter how good, you start nodding off after about 10. I don't have a watch. I have no idea what time it is, how long we have. I don't want to step over our time limit. I don't want to cut too short.
You have 15 minutes.
We have 15 minutes. Oh my God, what am I going to talk about for 15 minutes?
You want to give them the time to have questions.
We do have to have, yes, we do want to ask questions, want you to ask some questions. So think about some questions while I'm dithering around up here trying to think of a good one myself, which I'm up against. Do you have a question for your partner?
Yes. So it's about the next book. Because we have an idea already, and they found this. We were discussing this earlier. They found like this a skull from an old skull hidden away in her office in Reykjavik last week.
Well, it's actually a true story, but it sounds really, not probable when you say it. But there was a skull, bones of a human skull found at the Prime Minister's office the other day. Yes.
So I mean.
And I actually got a question about a minister that hadn't been seen for some time.
But
he was found alive.
If this isn't a sign to do if this isn't a sign for us to do another book, then I don't know what is. So
you see now what I'm talking about when I talk about passive aggressive, right?
This is why you would be willing to concede very quickly to any point that Katrín wanted to make. Okay, I don't want to be a skull in your office. Do you have a question for Ragnar? About any part of writing?
Yeah, well, what annoyed you most during the writing process of this book?
It was never being able to get in touch with Katrín, because she was always. I tried calling her, and then she was like meeting Trump or meeting Macron or whomever, and it was the most bizarre.
I think Trump had left, so I wasn't meeting him.
So Biden maybe. So it was the most bizarre, experience I've ever had, trying to call someone who was meeting world leaders, and that is, it puts you in your place, really.
Could you just interrupt him? I have a question about our fourth chapter. We don't care what you're talking about right now.
But I imagine
the economy.
Her stealing away from these meetings to write, and I don't know if she really did, but.
Okay, so since we do have some time, it's really hard for me to see out there because these lights are coming here. So if you have a question, wave or stand or something so I can actually see you. I see somebody back there. Yes?
Sorry, I'll pass the microphone. I'll get in a second. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, good. Hi.
My question. Okay. My question was, what are your favorite characters or personal favorites in your book?
In the book. Our favorite characters in this book.
I think it's probably Sunna, the literature student who sort of takes over the investigation and finds out what happened. And for many reasons, I mean, one being that somehow we managed to get away with doing a contemporary crime novel, more or less, with an amateur detective, which is a very golden age thing to do, which I love. And so Sunna is neither. She's not a policewoman and she's not a journalist. She's just this, student, university student who sort of stumbles into this case and then runs with it to the end. And so, yeah, I liked her.
I don't want to have the same answer. I would have said Sunna, but then I will say the gang of guys who are the main suspects in the book.
Okay. Who's your favorite character in all of crime fiction? Katrín?
The history of crime fiction.
Yes.
Oh my God, that's a very difficult
We know your favorite
one.
character in your book,
Yeah.
but who's your favorite character in all of crime fiction?
Well, it would be appropriate to mention Agatha Christie, but I think I would also like to mention an author very dear to me and his character, Wallander. I love Wallander. I loved Henning Mankell. And then, of course, Lisbeth Salander is a role model for all of us women.
And who's yours, Ragnar?
So again, I think the obvious choice would be Agatha Christie. So, and I love Agatha Christie. I love all her characters. So I don't think I'm gonna choose one. So I'm gonna say, because we spoke earlier about P.D. James, your friend. So I think I'll say Adam Dalgliesh. I mean, the books she wrote about Dalgliesh are fantastic, and just not enough of them really. And Dalgliesh is such a wonderful character, being a poet and a policeman, and there's so much of his artistic side that shines through when you read about him. So I love him.
Okay, thank you.
Could you discuss your experiences in finding a literary agent and a publisher in your quest to bring this book to the public?
Well, first, it's best that Ragnar answers that, but I can tell you that I used to work for a publishing house in Iceland, so I knew very well and know very well our publisher in Iceland. So that was not a problem, but then that's a small country. But then, of course, Ragnar is an established author and has publishers in many countries. But in Iceland, I, of course, was I'm very familiar with the publishing branch there.
Yeah, so I mean, for this particular book, it wasn't really a big problem because there was basically the publishers who had published my books before that picked up this book. But the journey of getting a book published outside of Iceland is difficult, and you have to have a good agent, and that took a while. And for me to get a book published in English was sort of it took maybe 5-6 years from the first book in Icelandic, and that basically happened because I played football with there was a book crime fiction festival in Scotland, and they had like English and Scottish crime writers competing, and I was put on one team, and there was a book publisher, actually a Canadian publisher who was on my team, and I think we lost heavily to the Scots, but after the match, she came up to me and said, I think I have your book on submission somewhere in my office, and I go and read it, check it out and read it, and the next week she offered me a contract for the book. So it was my lack of skills in football that was the start of all of this.
Okay.
Sæll blessaður. From what I understand, a lot of Icelandic presidents and leaders sort of have taught at universities in Iceland before. So it was interesting hearing about how you taught Icelandic literature. I was just wondering if you had comments on how so many teachers in Iceland have such successful careers in politics.
Well, yes, we have a president that's actually a history professor, and well, probably I think actually in Iceland it's considered to be just normal for the president to write a book about history because he has just done that, and normal for a prime minister to write a crime novel. So I think, which is maybe not normal at all anywhere else in the world.
No, it's uncommon.
It's uncommon and abnormal. No, I don't know. But I think actually background in literature is actually great for politics, because politics is all about human interaction and communication, and nothing prepares you better than literature for exactly that.
Ragnar, I know that you're the #1 best-selling author in Iceland, understandably. What are there, like 4 authors in the whole country? and 17 people, all of whom you know. So, has this book been very successful in Iceland to the same level as your singular books, or even more?
Yeah, even more actually. It was the overall bestseller in Iceland last year, so we were very, very happy with that.
Good for you. And also, by the way, #6 best-selling book in Kansas City. More questions? Where's the mic?
I got it right here.
Okay.
Thank you. You are so fluent. Did you consider translating your own work?
No.
No. No, I don't think you should. I honestly think because I've translated books from English to Icelandic, I don't think you should do it the other way around. I think you should translate into your native language as a general rule. So I wouldn't do that really. But I've done short stories that I've just written in English, and I have this idea for a Golden Age crime novel that I might write in English. But translating, I think I wouldn't really do that.
We have both translated books from English into Icelandic, and that is a very different affair. And so I definitely would not feel up to it simply to translate our book into English.
I will say that one of the short stories that Ragnar wrote, he wrote for the Mysterious Bookshop, because every Christmas I commission an original short story, which is set at the bookshop, set at Christmas time, which we give to our customers at Christmas time. So each year, a different writer, I find a different writer who's willing to do this for next to nothing. And I asked it, and we have discussed it in the bookshop, and Ragnar's is our favorite because it's the most intricate and the most interesting of all of the stories that we published. And it was in English. You wrote it in English. So it's there. You can do this if you want to. Just saying.
Hi. If this were a major motion picture movie and we paid our writers, what American international character or actors would you cast in this film?
Interesting. Let's hear, because some people say that Sunna is pretty much based on her. So it would be nice to hear who would
I wouldn't
basically
cast
play
myself.
you. Well, that's a good question.
Oh, I'm so unfamiliar with who. I sometimes, I lost out. I haven't really managed to follow up. I think Patrick Swayze was the last actor I actually knew who was. I don't know. Who would you cast?
But why not just Ryan Gosling and Margot Robbie? Seems to be a recipe
Anything
for
she
success.
wants.
I don't know.
Whatever. This is his choice.
I'd cast her in anything.
So I'm curious, what's the story with the skull? Like, how do you... like, you kind of dropped that, and you didn't really explain. Like, what, were they renovating your office, and they opened a wall, and the skull fell out?
Okay, so actually they were taking up some floorboards because and the skull was underneath the floor in the attic in the building. And presumably these are very old bones. Presumably, I can't say because they haven't been diagnosed probably, but we would presume, the house has been there since the 1930. And there is a theory because the churchyard is close by, so maybe they could have come from there, but we are still waiting for the scientists to do their job. So that's the story.
You're not a suspect in this, are you?
Well, as I said, there were many interesting, everybody participated on social media, and I got this question about the missing minister, but it's these bones are old.
I have one quick question. I know that being prime minister takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, and writing a book also takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. It does seem to me that some of the time you spent working on this book, you could have spent a little more time as prime minister. Because, let me just finish my thought, if I may. I don't mean to be rude, but it seems to me that you could have made a deal and changed names with Greenland. Because everybody thinks Greenland is this lovely, lush place. Iceland is frigid and icy. Couldn't you change the names?
No, we could not. But because this was mainly written during the pandemic, so I will just ask you to check out how we did during the pandemic, and then you will find that I was doing my job.
I know you were.
Thank you so much. I wanted to tell you I specifically came here to hear you both from Berkeley, California. And my question really is, Ragnar, I'm reading one of your earlier books. And if you both could really define Icelandic noir. I'm fascinated you mentioned Christie and P.D. James, who I both love. You're definitely not noir writers. And reading your book, Ragnar, it seems to me, it's very Hitchcock, Alfred Hitchcock, but also that the land that is such a character, the physicality of where the characters are. Would you say that's a major part of noir? Thank you.
Thank you for coming all the way from Berkeley. I spent a week there some years ago for a book festival, and it's a lovely place. So I think we had a discussion earlier actually about Icelandic noir and sort of how to define that. And I think, my influence certainly is not from what you would call noir in any way. I mean, it's Agatha Christie, it's the golden age. But I think Icelandic noir is, in a way, it's a brand that is used by publishers for Icelandic crime fiction in general, whatever the influences are. And one of the aspects there is definitely nature. I mean, nature is such a big part of Iceland, and we only live along the coastline, pretty much. So by far the largest part of Iceland is just the highlands and nature, and we're quite proud of that and want to preserve that, and so it very much gets into the stories we tell, whether it's crime fiction or anything else. And as we're discussing, I mean, as we mentioned, P.D. James and Agatha Christie, I think there's one more detective that I would like to say as one of my favorites. Of course, it's Philo Vance, who was created by S.S. Van Dyne, and no one reads him anymore, but I do, and Otto does as well. And if you haven't read S.S. Van Dyne, these books take place in the great city of New York, and I was reading one today. It's great to read them here.
As much respect as I have for you, I remain baffled that you could actually find Philo Vance bearable.
I so agree with you, Otto.
I think it's a lot of fun to read.
He finishes every sentence with "Don't you know?" You know, you just want to slap him about halfway through the book. I'm glad you agree.
We have time for maybe one more question.
Okay, one more question. Anybody? Where's the mic? Okay.
Thank you. I really appreciated how grief was so nuanced in the book and how it had so many layers. I was wondering what the theme of like theology throughout your books was about.
Well, that's a very good question because Ragnar was describing nature and environment in Icelandic literature, and I think that is because Icelanders find spirituality in nature and environment, and for us, when we seek spiritual fulfillment, we go out into the nature, and maybe having a person in the book who is studying theology was also an attempt to capture a little bit some spirituality, and maybe it was also. Well, I will make a confession here that part of the book was written in one of the oldest churches in Iceland, or the place where that church is. So it gave quite an inspiration for some spirituality, which is interesting because Icelanders are it's not a very religious society, but it's a spiritual society.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much for this. Thank you, Katrín. Thank you, Ragnar.